Welcome everyone. You are joining us for Accelerating Time to Market with Semrock Optical Filters. This webinar is presented by IDEX Health Science and hosted by Photonics Media. Today you're going to hear from Dr. Elizabeth Bernhardt, Senior Application Scientist at IDEX Health Science for Semrock Optical Filter lines. In this session, she is going to share how the Semrock suite of tools accelerates prototyping timelines. So you can ask questions or leave comments in the chat at any time. If you have any technical issues during the event, please log out and back in to rejoin. You will be able to access a recording of this webinar online after the event, and you will receive a link to that recording by email. So with nothing further from me, I would like to welcome Elizabeth Bernhardt. Welcome.
Thanks, Joanna. I'll start sharing my screen. While we're waiting for it to load, thank you so much for attending this webinar. I'm really excited to share some insights into how to accelerate your time to market. So my name is Elizabeth Bernhardt. I'm a Senior Application Scientist here at IDEX Health Science. As you may know, Semrock is an industry-leading provider of hard-coded interference optical filters, which will be the focus of this webinar. And while this webinar assumes a general familiarity with hard-coded optical filters, please note we have many great resources on our website to expand your knowledge. Today, we will discuss how to accelerate time to market using the free SearchLight spectral modeling tool, our extensive optical filter catalog, and of course, partnering with us. Moving from prototyping to manufacturing in 18 to 24 months or fewer is becoming key to a product's success. In addition to higher market share and earlier revenue generation, first to market results in premium pricing and higher sales levels. This is particularly true in the life sciences industry, where rapid adoption of new technologies can drive research and diagnostic capabilities forward. Early market entrants can establish a strong brand presence and become the go-to solution for researchers and clinicians. Of course, patent protections can safeguard innovations and provide a period of market exclusivity. These advantages underscore the importance of rapid development and commercialization strategies in the life science sector. We find many users of these life science instruments need higher throughput, better signal, and darker background, which means selecting the right optical filters is key to product success. You need a stable supply chain, smart investment of R&D dollars, and ultimately, technical collaboration to meet your filter needs. As such, I present here some tools and prototyping considerations to meet the demands of accelerating time to market. So first, let's consider how to use SearchLight to model your system. This tool saves you time avoiding filter optimization at the breadboard level. You may have heard the phrase, 1 hour in the library saves 10 hours in a lab. And while there have been no peer-reviewed studies demonstrating how much time SearchLight saves, anecdotal evidence suggests it's a non-trivial amount. This free tool simulates fluorescence setups, enabling you to compare different filters, light sources, and fluorophores. As a note, your data are always confidential. Signing up for an account opens the full power of SearchLight. So let's first briefly cover some SearchLight basics. Please hold a moment while I share another part of my screen. To unlock the full power of SearchLight, you'll need to create an account. As you can see, I'm logged in. An account will allow you to share and save your SearchLight sessions, upload your own spectral response data, and plenty of other things. Creating an account is easy and it's free. So bringing filters into your SearchLight session is easy using this search feature. You can search by center wavelength, such as 500 nanometers, or filter type. And you bring the filter into your session by clicking on the arrow next to your filter of interest, or you can click on the part number. If you would like to explore our catalog filters and find a bandpass filter with a center wavelength around 600 nanometers, you can do that. If you'd like to use our naming conventions to explore our catalog, for example, knowing that all of our dichroics have DI in the part numbers, you can type that in and then the search box will bring up all the dichroics in the system. The filter search box uses an asterisk as a wildcard feature, which is great for expanding your searches, such as here where, whoops, we now pulled up a dichroic that has an edge around 500 nanometers. Okay, so suppose you found some bandpass filters in your lab and you would like to find a suitable dichroic. So first, let's bring these filters into our SearchLight session. I'm going to remove these two filters so we can completely start over. Let's say you found FO1 500/24. So we'll bring that in. And suppose that you found FFO1 571/72. And so now we have both of those filters in our session. If you want to adjust the wavelength range, you can create a little box to zoom in, or you can type the wavelength range of interest. And if you want to reset to default, just double click on the background. Now let's consider which fluorophore you're going to use with these filters you found in our imaginary lab. Let's say we're going to use YFB, and so we can type it into the search bar and we find the spectra. So now let's look at some considerations to determine if these two filters could make a suitable exciter and emitter pair. Firstly, these passbands, they overlap well enough with the YFP spectra that we can now look at the OD blocking. The way you do this is by clicking on the OD radio button. And in general, you need deep blocking in the complementary passband. So you want your exciter to have blocking where your emitter transmits light and vice versa. And you need your critical edges, so these two proximal edges, to be separated in wavelength space. The place where the spectra overlap, which is very deep here, is called the crossover point. I like to aim for a crossover point of at least OD 3.5, which means the spectral response curves overlap at a minimum of OD 3.5. And we see these two filters could make a good pair because the OD blocking is high and the crossover point is deep. Let's look at an example of a filter that wouldn't be an optimal choice. So when you look at this filter set in transmission space, these edges are quite close together, and you might be tempted to think that this is a really good set. But then when you look in OD space, we see that that crossover point is not deep enough. And so that means there's a potential for light source bleed through, increased background, and many other problems in your system. Okay, so we've determined our two filters that we found in our imaginary lab have adequate OD blocking and an adequate OD crossover point. So now we can use the compatible products search to find dichroics. First, we click on this dashed line next to our fluorophore. We click on Find Compatible Products. And you can see we can look for different filters of different types. So if you found a dichroic and an exciter in your lab, find an emitter. If you'd like to search for a set, you can do that as well. But let's start with dichroics. And we can see that the system pulled up a lot of different great dichroics for you to consider. Let's go ahead and pull a few of these into the system or into our SearchLight session. Ooh, that one's not good. Okay. So I typically look for a dichroic that has suitable reflection and transmission bands and a dichroic edge that is not too close to the exciter or the emitter. And we can visually compare the dichroics to see which one would be best, but there's an additional important SearchLight feature that can help you quantify instead of qualify how good this filter set is, and that's the compare system calculator. And so you just click on it to create a compare system calculator. So using this calculator, you can model the signal and the noise in the system, and it's easy to fill in the different inputs. We just select the exciter, emitter, one of our dichroics, and our fluorophore. Excuse me. So these outputs, we can interpret them as the signal relating to the brightness, the excitation light noise relating to the background darkness, and the signal to noise ratio relating to the contrast. Now we can browse through the different dichroics we found and look at the different outputs from these calculators to see which is the brightest or which one we would like to use in our system. However, notice there's a few more inputs that we could customize to better model your system: the light source and the detector. So we can search for these spectral responses in SearchLight, either by directly searching or just browsing through the different spectral responses and picking the one that's closest to your spectral response in the lab. In this case, let's use this light source. And you can also search through the detectors, again, either by just scrolling through and finding one that's closest to your detector or by directly searching for it. Okay, so we can now fill in our calculator and more fully model the system. So let's consider which filter set may be the optimal selection for this fluorescence setup using this calculator feature. To save just a little bit of time, I've set up multiple calculators here using that same light source, that same detector, and that same fluorophore. Okay, so we're now going to compare. We're going to compare some different dichroics that we found during our search. We can look through and see the different fluorescence signals, the different light excitation light noises, and the different signal to noise ratios. If you would like the brightest signal and the darkest background, this calculator shows that our premium Avant filter set provides high signal and dark background. But suppose your system doesn't necessarily need that premium performance. We see that this particular set, the LED YFP-A, has a roughly similar brightness and a similarly dark background. And it's a bit easier to compare these two sets by normalizing your calculators to one of the filter sets. So once we've chosen a set we like, we can go directly to the product page by clicking on these three dashed lines and then the view on idexhealthandscience.com. And now you'll be able to order the filter, look at different specifications, things of that nature. So now, suppose your particular light source or your particular detector, or even your fluorophore, aren't in SearchLight. This is where signing up for a session comes in, or signing up for an account comes in handy. You can upload the response using a tab delimited file and the My Data feature. So I just clicked on My Data and Add. You bring your custom data into SearchLight in the same manner that you bring in other spectra, just by double clicking on the name of your data. And of course, you can then use this data in your calculators. You can also model a bandpass filter or a long wave pass filter or a dichroic. And the way you do that is with model a spectrum. And then you can select, for example, the wavelength and the bandwidth of interest. And now we can pull that into our section as well. Now, suppose your filter has, or your system has one of your filters at a non-normal angle of incidence or a non-zero cone half angle. You can model our catalog filters using MyLight, which uses the actual coding recipe we use to manufacture the filter. So let's look at, for example, let's just pull in one of our filters. We can click model this filter, You can select different angle of incidences, different cone half angles, and different polarizations. And the polarization is pretty helpful for your dichroics. When you click on Generate and OK, the system will then bring that spectra into your SearchLight session. So as you can see, testing and optimizing with SearchLight saves you from painstaking validating different filter combinations in the lab, which frees up your time for other endeavors. So we've covered how to optimize a single channel setup by finding compatible filters and using the calculators to compare different options. We've also seen how to customize the calculators to your setup. Now, suppose you have a multi-channel system or you're using more than one fluorophore in your setup. Let's look at an example for Psi3 and Psi5. So in this SearchLight session, I pre-populated the fluorophores. I pre-populated the light source, and I pre-populated the detector. I've also selected a filter setup for our consideration. And let's calculate the bleed through using the system calculators. So firstly, here is the desired Psi3 channel signal and the desired Psi5 channel signal. To calculate the bleed through, we simply populate the exact same filter setup, but the different fluorophore, and then look at the results to determine the predicted bleed through. So this calculator shows how much Psi5 signal will be present in the Psi3 channel. And I've done the same for the Psi5 channel. One way to interpret these results is to look at the amount of fluorescence signal, and you can see that it's roughly equal for both channels and that the bleed through is fairly minimal. Then we can look at like a percentage of that by normalizing to the other calculators. So extrapolating to other systems, you can create a SearchLight calculator for each fluorophore and each channel in your system to compare your desired signal and calculate the bleed through. You can save your SearchLight sessions, and this will allow you to come back later to edit them. You can also share your SearchLight session with your colleagues and then collaborate using this generated link. The export feature downloads all of the calculators that we created in a CSV format, and the print feature creates a printable PDF of the entire session. There are additional SearchLight capabilities, which are just a little bit beyond the scope of this webinar. However, we have many tutorials and how-tos on our website for you to explore. You can learn more using the help link. If you notice your favorite fluorophore or light source or detector are missing from SearchLight, please reach out and we may add it to our library. Now, at times, there isn't quite the filter you're looking for in our catalog, or you know from the get-go you want a custom filter for your system. So you need custom specifications. Custom filters tailor the optical response to your system, and therefore you only pay for the optical response you need. You can use our filter catalogs to experiment with filter spectral responses to assist in determining custom specifications. So now in this section of the talk, we're going to look at ways to manipulate the filters or combine them to discover optical specifications your system needs while also considering filter cost drivers. So now let's return to my slides. So it's quite likely you have a general idea of that passband region you would like for your system, but perhaps you'd like to fine-tune it just a little bit. One way to do that is by combining a shortwave pass filter to build this edge and a long wave pass filter filled this edge. And then you can combine those two to create your own bandpass filter. And then you can also look at angle tuning, which is a great way to test the location of an edge and if there may be a benefit to shifting the passband to the blue. And remember, you can model angle tuning using SearchLight, so you don't necessarily need to do that in the lab until you know exactly where you want your edge placement to be. So by angle tuning, or combining the different filters, you can determine the center wavelength and bandpass region. You can also create a bandpass using two different bandpass filters to just create a smaller passband. There are many ways to determine what depth of blocking your system needs. For example, combining two or more copies of a filter can demonstrate the need for deeper blocking than what one filter provides, which is what this OD graph is showing, so OD blocking. Moreover, we have different levels of OD blocking across different families of filters. Our nanopede filter family has essential OD blocking of OD5. Our Brightline filter family has a variety of different levels of blocking, and you can look at the filter specifications on each filter page. You can also combine different depths of OD blocking to see what your system may need, like using a nanopede filter and a Brightline filter. Now, rarely is the deepest blocking required throughout the entire wavelength region that you're using. One can consider different levels of blocking in a stepped approach, such that the deepest blocking is near your passbands, while the blocking decreases outside of this range. Tailoring the depth of blocking to your detector responsivity means you do not pay for the OD blocking you do not need. In addition to depth of blocking, one must consider the range of blocking. So what is the responsivity of your detector? Photomultiplier tubes and some photo avalanche diodes have extremely low responsivity in the near IR and the IR, which demonstrates another situation where careful consideration of detector responsivity can save you money. Nowadays, many cameras have an IR filter built directly into the assembly, so you may not even need blocking in that region. You can also consider your light source and tailor your OD breadth to match it. Edge steepness is the transition from OD6 blocking to transmission, with a steeper edge indicating a narrower transition in wavelength space. We have varying levels of edge steepness amongst our catalog filters. The steepest edges mean you can get closer and closer and closer to your light source, or closer and closer and closer to where you want to collect your signal, just depending on which edge is steeper. In general, a steeper edge is a higher cost driver, so you should optimize for the right steepness. And you can compare different steepness levels using SearchLight as your guide. Now let's look at one interesting scenario that I've encountered a few times. So sometimes you might determine a set of specifications for one channel in the system. In this case, perhaps the edge steepness for one of the filters. And you want to translate that specification to a different channel, such as the red channel. This is where some math becomes key. You need to consider relative changes instead of absolute changes. So as an example, an 8 nanometer transition at 415 nanometers, which means your edge steepness or your transition occurs over 8 nanometers. That's a reasonable edge steepness of 1.5%. However, you take that same 8 nanometers and translate it over to 750 nanometers, and it's much steeper, resulting in a 1% edge steepness. So that those specifications in your red channel will be much more expensive. However, if you instead use the 1.5% edge steepness. So this is the relative change. The transition is over 12 nanometers at 750, and the edge steepness cost driver remains the same because you use that same percent edge steepness. So I strongly recommend using relative changes, which is a percentage of the target wavelength. You may be familiar with optical system modeling and ways to determine the field angles for your system. Careful consideration of your AOI, so your angle of incidence, and your CHA, your cone half angle, are paramount to filter design. So while the angle of incidence shifts an edge to the blue as it increases, the CHA relaxes that edge as it averages over all of the AOIs in that filter response. We can design for these effects such that transmission remains high and those edges remain steep even at high cone half angle. I'd like to take a moment to talk about manufacturing specifications. So we use manufacturing specifications, which means the specifications on our drawings and our spec sheets are the specifications your manufactured filter will have. We have over 20 years of experience making hard-coded optical filters, so we know what to expect from our manufacturing processes. So manufacturing margin is this Gaussian distribution, and it's how much the filter edge shifts around in wavelength space due to natural variations in the manufacturing processes. We build in this manufacturing margin to our designs. So in other words, the filter you receive will have the specifications. It's not just the theoretical response that meets the specifications. Our manufacturing margins are industry leading, and some consider them the gold standard. Okay, so we've covered how to model in SearchLight and how to test specifications and think about specifications during prototyping. So now let's talk about partnering with me and my team. We are the specification experts. We walk through your specification choices and trade-offs with you as you prototype, so you can meet your system performance needs and your filter bill of material. In our partnership, we can determine which specifications are key to your setup and your application. As an example, if you need the highest signal and darkest background, we would recommend our precise edge placement ability. Using our state-of-the-art techniques, we're able to reduce that manufacturing margin, that Gaussian distribution, such that the variability run to run is even better than our gold standard manufacturing margin. We pride ourselves in the repeatability of our manufacturing processes. As you can see in this graph, our filters are the same run to run, year to year, even facility to facility. Now we have the measurement capabilities to prove we meet or exceed our manufacturing specifications. We use our flagship spectral measurement system, the Peregrine, to measure down to OD6. But that didn't measure deep enough OD blocking for us. So we developed the award-winning ColaDeep spectral measurement system, which can measure down to OD9, 10, even 11. ColaDeep can also resolve the steepest of edges, such as our Verona family filters that have a transition about 1 nanometer, but it depends on the wavelength. So we can prove these tight transitions and these extremely deep edges match your specifications. When we first start collaborating, our collaboration determines which manufacturing line your filters should follow based on your production level demands. This means the filters you use for prototyping use the exact same manufacturing process as your production level filters, so there's no need for a second round of validation. Finally, use our strengths to bring your system to the market rapidly. We have high transmission, deep blocking, and steep edges, and we prove it. This means your system performs as you expect. With lot-to-lot consistency and precise edge placement, we ensure a filter's critical edge is consistent throughout all of your systems, ensuring results across your instruments are reliable and comparable. We also have 2 coating technologies to meet your production level demand, which ensures supply continuity and continued sales growth. In addition to all of these great reasons to partner, we have a generous return policy and industry-leading warranty. Our standard-sized catalog filters have a 30-day return policy, meaning if the filter doesn't work for you, you can just return it. So you don't need to waste your R&D budget on filters you don't need. We also have a 10-year warranty on all filters. We stand behind our products and their performance, empowering you to stand behind your instruments and their performance. Overall, we've discussed how to accelerate your time to market using the SearchLight spectral modeling tool, our expansive catalog of optical filters, and of course, partnering with us. So thank you so much for your time, and let's move to a few questions.
Thank you so much. Yes, we have time for a few questions now before we close. Everyone, if you have not already, please go ahead and type questions and comments into that webinar questions box there. All right, so let's see. The first question I have here is, how can I customize my SearchLight calculator to help closely match my setup?
This is a really great question. So let me share my SearchLight sessions again. So the way to tailor your system calculators even more to your particular setup is using the advanced inputs feature. One of the things that I tend to like to do is turning this autofluorescence light factor to 0, just because it's a percentage of the signal, and I find that autofluorescence is wavelength dependent and not signal dependent. You can also change the light source power, your numerical aperture. You can change your fluorophore quantum yield or how much it emits. And you can double check what you are changing with the calculator inputs. So this is, click on that help feature and scroll all the way down. You can find the different calculator inputs and then what these advanced inputs mean. So this is a really great way to tailor your calculator to your setup.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, let's see. This next question is, what is the difference between MyLight and SearchLight?
Ooh, this is wonderfully tricky. Okay, so MyLight just means that we're using the actual coding recipe to do the calculations for you. So when it says click for MyLight tool, that's what we're doing. And so you can do this on the product page. So let's just go real nuts. Or you can do this in SearchLight, like we talked about, by clicking on those 3 dots, the model this filter. This is the MyLight feature. And then you can model the filter. So there's not much of a difference. MyLight just means that you're using the custom coding recipe that we actually use to coat the filter to stimulate the response.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, let's see. This next person asked, how do I customize the dimensions of the filters that I order?
Yeah, this is a really cool new feature that we added to the website. So when you come to the product page, you will see this don't see a size you need. Simply flip this toggle, and then you can select the different sizes. So if you need, for example, a rectangular filter, let's say it's 8 by 18 millimeters, you click calculate, and it'll show you if it's in stock or if you should contact us for lead time. It'll also give you the price. And then if you want to do, for example, a different housing, you can select our different housings. You can change the diameter. Let's try 16. You can see this one, we would need to contact us for lead time. There are a few things that are not available on this custom size maker, but you can just reach out to us. For example, if your filter housing, if you see that it says it's 3.5 millimeter thickness, and you actually want the 5 millimeter thickness housing, just reach out. It's the exact same price, and we can give you the part number as an example.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I think that's all the time we have for questions right now. But everyone, if you do think of another question, you can reach out to let us know. You can reach out to webinar@photonics.com. That's webinar@photonics.com. And just a final note, this whole session was recorded and will be available on the Photonics Media website shortly. You will receive a link to that recording by email. So I'd like to thank Dr. Elizabeth Bernhardt one last time. Thank you so much for presenting with us today. And I'd like to thank everyone in the audience here for participating. This webinar was presented by IDEX Health Science and hosted by Photonics Media. So thank you, everybody, and have a nice day.
Thank you.